Hello and welcome to the Movie Podcast. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts today, and joining alongside me here in Pride Rock are my fellow lions. It's Shahbaz.
Hey, what's the matter with you?
Why do the lions sound like this, though, man?
I'm a lion from Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklyn lion.
Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. And Anthony.
Hello. I'm a chill lion.
He's just a chill guy. He's a cool
Just a
lion.
chill guy.
This is how I roar.
You say you're
What's up, guys? I'm good.
Chill lion or a Chilean? Which one was it?
Both. I'm a Chilean chill lion.
Oh, good. Home with the best lions.
I like it. It's a very multicultural, like, melting pot of Pride Rock. That's what it is, right? Like, this is where this is the haven for all animals to come. I love it. Today we are talking about Mufasa, the Lion King. I'm realizing when we did this introduction, I didn't actually say the name of the movie we were reviewing, but we're so far into it now. I feel like we should just keep going.
And the stuff that we have already is so good.
It's so good. You know, like, hopefully you saw the name, you clicked on this episode, you saw the picture, and here we are. We're talking about Mufasa, the Lion King. Of course, this is the sequel / prequel to Jon Favreau's reimagining of the 1994 masterpiece animated film. And here we are. We're back in the world of The Lion King. We're the Movie Podcast. You can catch brand new episodes all throughout the week with new episodes, reviews, interviews, and all the latest movies and series. We have a lot coming out this week. This is our final week of 2024. You will not see us anymore this year after the ending of this week, but we'll have some, little things coming out here and there, maybe.
Unless Henry Cavill returns as Superman, then...
And, this is the bar. Henry Cavill is back as Superman for some reason after we know we're getting a trailer.
They're scrapping the David Corn Sweat's version.
Yeah, they said, Zach, come on back. We're going to just keep continuing on.
Yeah.
We really want to do that. Yeah, so pending, even if Tom Holland isn't Spider-Man anymore, I think we're going to take a break. We need a break.
Yeah.
It's been a very difficult year. We legit... As we were starting to record this, we got an email from YouTube. I don't know if you guys saw this. Don't look if you haven't seen it yet. Saying, congratulations on the year. Look how many new subscribers we've had. Do you have any guesses as to how many views that the Movie Podcast has had this year?
I couldn't tell you.
Anthony, don't guess because you're always looking at it. But I'm going to get Shay to guess first.
I'm going to guess we've had at least 1 million views.
Okay, that's a good guess. Anthony, do you want a bit of a higher guess?
Oh, it's a given. Okay.
By the time we end this, we'll hit 7 million views. So I'm going to say 6 million views.
Right now, again, I don't know when this is pulling from, but YouTube is telling us that we have about 4.6 million views this year.
Wow.
Which is wrong data.
Which is
okay.
Where you
wrong.
Go. And that's the thing. I know Anthony's in the data on YouTube all the time, so he has the inside scoop. When this is put together,
I'm looking at this email. It says it's until November 30th.
Okay, but I still think that number may be wrong. It may be higher. Yeah. We'll get the fun. We'll recap all of that next year. But don't worry. All I was going to say is that we've had so many uploads this year on YouTube and on podcast feeds. We're so grateful that you all have stuck with us this year through everything that we've released, all of our interviews, all of our reviews. We're coming down to the final few now to round out 2024. And, movies don't get much bigger than a Lion King sequel of all friggin' things. Before we get into our actual review, though, again, I just want to say a huge thank you to our friends at Disney for inviting us. If you like what we're doing here, you watching this right now or listening to this on podcast feeds, check out our show notes below. It has everything you need to know and more to follow us on socials. That's where you want to see us. You want to see these lovely faces, see what we get up to. I do want to ask both of you, though, I know we are all huge fans of The Lion King 1994 asterisks. Just to kind of, to set the barometer up for this film, where were we with the 2019 Jon Favreau film? And Anthony, I'm going to get you to start us off.
I disliked it very, very much. That's
Thank you very much for that.
That is it.
Do you want to expand?
No, it was, I think a lot of people were excited going into that film because it's like this new version of The Lion King in a sense that it's computer generated and not hand-drawn animation.
Live action.
Even though it's not live action, but it's photorealistic, I guess that's the live action is photorealistic. And I think technically it was a beautiful film, but emotionally and performance, I think it missed the mark on it. I think a lot of people went into this thinking it was going to be what they experienced maybe when they were a kid watching Lion King on screen, and they didn't get that same reaction. I didn't get that same reaction. I felt like it was very cold, very soulless, and I think it just the photorealistic look of these animals are beautiful, but they just don't add that touch that the animation from the 90s brought. And I think that's what a lot of that live action is missing. And that's not just with this film, I think with a lot of Disney films.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about animated films going to live action, and I think there's two movies that I think about growing up watching on VHS and rewatching nonstop. It's Toy Story and it's Lion King. Those are films that were just on loop in my house. And let me tell you, when I heard Hakuna Matata playing at the end of Toy Story, when they're in the car, it's like my brain would melt every time because I'm like, oh my God, they know of each other. But I'm very much in the same camp as you, Anthony. I think technically it is a beautiful film in the sense of look at what we're able to pull off. But I always get reminded of that sentiment from Jurassic Park, just because you could do this doesn't mean you should do this all the time, right? To paraphrase, it's just like, it looks beautiful. I think you have an incredible cast. I think there's some fun performances in that film, but there's so much that it, I think, misses out on what made that 1994 film so iconic, so beloved. And it just felt like here we are getting, the same thing again, this, but we're removing a lot of that, that visual prowess that made that first animated film so legendary. Shahbaz, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm very much in the same boat here. I'm a huge, massive fan of the original 1994 The Lion King. My room was decked out in it, my pillow covers, everything, and it came to the point where the only toys I had were Lion King based. And I remember being so excited for the 2019 version. Daniel, you and I filmed a reaction to the trailer, which I don't even know what part of our lives that was anymore. The early days
that was on YouTube. I think that is still on this very channel. Maybe people are watching it and contributing to those views that we have this year. Who knows?
Sitting in that 2019 film, I kept just kind of wondering and waiting for the magic of it all, because I just was like, I'm actually kind of bored here. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you know what, you can't touch a classic. I think, go ahead, always attempt, because you never know what you're going to get. And it might be that version for somebody new, or for someone like me, it just may not hit at all. The movie made $1 billion, so clearly it was successful. But I think everyone that I've ever talked to about this film has been like, yeah, I didn't connect with it. I didn't find that piece that I wanted to. I think I went in looking for the Lion King 94 and that joy that it brought, but I just kind of walked out going, well, it looks really cool what they were able to do, but it's devoid of any of the fun that the original had. And that's kind of how I walked out of it. I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't big on it. I saw it the one time and saw it in 3D, and I tried watching it at home, and I just was like, yeah, it's not for me.
Yeah, and that was 2019. And when we think of Disney's year in 2019, that blockbuster, their best year ever, I think, at the box office, right? With every single movie was hitting big that year. Everything was hitting $1 billion for them. And, and obviously there's components of it too, where it's like, yeah, we're growing up, we're not getting, it's not what we had when we grew up. So there's like that nostalgia aspect too. But you would hope that the nostalgia would be enough to overcompensate for the misses of it. But I still think there was enough of a course correction that they corrected a lot of things in Mufasa the Lion King. So let's start here. This is coming from Barry Jenkins, a director who you'll know for some absolute cinematic classics in the last 10 years, especially when you think of someone like this is coming from the guy who did Moonlight. And you're just like, hold on a second. This is a very interesting pick to come into this world. Barry Jenkins, who has no other previous really foot into this world of, big visual effects or even larger scale filmmaking, right? You look at Moonlight, I think they shot that over the course of 19 days, you know what I mean? Or it could have been even less. So it's a very interesting pick. I think it paid off in a lot of senses, but let's get into it. Of course, this is coming out in theaters on December 20th. Everybody pretty much is coming back from the first film. We have some new actors coming in to play Mufasa, who is Aaron Pierre, and Taka, who is Kelvin Harrison Jr. and we have a lot of new cast coming out to fill in the younger versions of these characters. But Shay, jump on in. Let us know what you thought of Mufasa, the Lion King.
Mufasa, the Lion King is a technical marvel. It takes the criticisms from the 2019 version of The Lion King and improves what was necessary. You wanted to talk about how the animals emoted. That was such a big thing when we watched the 2019 version. You never felt that the animals were actually doing anything. And it made that voice acting feel very stilted. But that's one major criticism that was corrected in this version. The wonderful voice acting is now given this performance by the actual animals. And you kind of start to see the world around them interact this way. And it feels great. But the biggest criticism that it wasn't able to address, and it is a problem from the ground up, is that the world feels kind of flat. The visuals feel kind of flat. There's a bit of a lifelessness to them. And that's the part that I still feel like when I'm watching this movie, it almost just kind of glazes over my eyes. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm having a good time, but it never leaves a lasting impact. And I wonder if it's just because, these are really lifelike animals doing this. The pop of color is missing. The charm is missing. The characters look great. Yes, it's a technical feat that they're able to look this good. But because there's a detachment around anything else, you start to kind of feel that the emotion that you want to go in with isn't there. But again, we talk about the performances, and Aaron Pierre and Kelvin Harrison Jr. are amazing. They were able to fill in this void that you would be like, okay, well, James Earl Jones isn't back. We don't have Jeremy Irons here. We don't even have Chiwetel Ejiofor or I guess James Earl Jones from the 2019 version. So how are we going to be able to do this? And they fill in the roles so well. They have great chemistry. They look great as well. And they just have some great time. And I felt that connection with them. I love where the music is also going with this. It doesn't stick with me as much. And Lin-Manuel Miranda's music, there's some of it that I really, really enjoy. And a lot of times I feel like it kind of follows a similar path. And there are a couple of songs in here that I feel like really are very much a signature. One in particular, which I was very surprised about being a feature song in this movie. And the other ones that I felt like were very beautiful. Again, they don't really come to the heights of what we were expecting from the original film. But if you want to try to flush that away and kind of go in with this, there's a lot of music in here that I think people will love and they will continue to listen to. And it may be a classic for them going forward, except for that one, which I'm sure we're going to get to. Overall, I think the film is technically great, but it doesn't feel great in the sense of how it captures you.
I think we should just talk about that song right now. So I'm assuming, Shay, the song you are talking about is Bye Bye. Correct?
Yeah, that is not by NSYNC.
Bye-bye.
Not by NSYNC.
No, it's not Bye Bye Bye. It is
Bye
Bye. And this is, performed by Mads Mikkelsen and, the team in this segment. This is his big villain song. Obviously, we know Scar has some absolute bangers in the first Lion King.
Be prepared.
I don't think it gets better than Be Prepared in any medium of music. It's that is the song. That is the song. We have, the villain in this film is a white lion and he's singing Bye Bye. And literally, I'm saying it like that. That is legit how Mads Mikkelsen says it in the song. It's very Lin-Manuel Miranda playful. And I just think that the song itself, it was stuck in my head a little bit on the drive home because I kept thinking about the song of wow, the song sticks out a little too much, especially when you're trying to make this character very menacing. There is a lyric in it that I really like when he was saying, the circle of life is a lie and a nice way to say that there's predators and prey. I'm like, yeah, cool. I like that you're playing with, the teachings of Simba and Mufasa and being like, listen, the world is black and white. You're evil. You're either dead or you're alive. You're either prey or you're a predator. I like that. But it's such a comedically playful song that I think it just sticks out a lot. And I think Mads Mikkelsen, who is a brilliant performer and obviously brings so much gravitas and scariness to this role, it just did not work for me, this song. It did not work for me at all.
It felt silly. Genuinely just kind of felt a little silly. And I wasn't finding this character menacing anymore. And I was like, oh, this is weird moment to have this.
I think it's because when you have a character that's going to sing, I think the song has to work with choreography, right?
Yes,
like
it does. 100%.
If he was saying bye 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 and he was kind of like egging sorry, I'm thinking of Instinct right now. But he's egging on these characters that he's saying bye to, because the theme of the song is, I'm going to take over this land and you're going to say goodbye. I'm saying goodbye to you. But if it was in an animation style where he kind of glided up to a lion and he touched his nose and it was just like this playful charm to it, it's not there.
You're so right. You're so right. If that was like the movement, if there was a little bit more of a cheekiness play to it, this is a real looking lion that looks like it's going to tear you apart.
Yeah.
It doesn't give off the same vibe, right? Again, the song itself isn't the biggest issue. I think you're so right, Anthony. There's also the sense of what it's being paired to, and it's a photorealistic lion singing this to other animals who are all just kind of looking like.
Yeah, I can see this song in like an animated movie. I can see, Scar all hunched down or, looking through and then kind of like being silly with it, because that can be menacing. But a real lion doing it, it just kind of looks weird. Like, it's like if I went to the African Lion Safari here in Toronto, I'd be like, what the hell's going on over there? Like, why are they doing this?
Why is this lion? First of all, this lion could sing. This is amazing.
You guys have a singing lion and that's not on the brochure? Wow. Like, what are you talking about?
This lion can emote so well. Anthony, please jump on in and give us your thoughts on Mufasa, the Lion King.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think technically, visually, it's fantastic. Like, just the photorealism of these animals are beautiful to look at. The savannas, a lot of this movie takes place in the snow, so snow is a big factor. And I've never seen snow with animals animated like this. It's just there's a sequence with Rafiki doing snow angels. And
it looked gorgeous.
I'm looking at the snow and it like falls on the, like, things like that. Technically, it's fantastic, but it loses the emotional value that these characters can bring to the screen, because it feels like you're watching a National Geographic movie. It doesn't even feel like these should be talking. It should be like, oh, you should hear like a narrator saying, oh, and there's Rafiki, he's about to jump off, a tree. And so when you don't have that emotional value, you kind of lose that whole feeling of the magic that you were talking about, Shay. But this story is a lot better than the first one. Like, I think with the first one, you're remaking already a classic. With this one, it's a new original story, and we're getting to see Mufasa and Scar, Taka, in a different light. It's just, it feels different. They were brothers, and what happened? It's like the gossip. Like, how did they become enemies? And why did Taka get this name, and why did he betray his brother? And I think after watching it, it's like, oh, I feel bad for Taka. I actually felt for his character more than just, again, Disney kind of reinventing the villain and seeing them in a different light. This is not just a revenge tale. When we saw Lion King, there's a lot that kind of added up to it, but I love the brother storyline. I just wish there was more depth. You have Barry Jenkins behind directing this. I can't say behind the camera, but directing this. I expected a little bit more from the depth of these characters, because when you think of the two characters, Mufasa and Taka or / Scar, there was a battle, but you don't know why and you don't know how. And I wish it wasn't what it was when I went into this movie and I said, I think this is what happens. And I even told you guys, I think this is what leads to the separation. And I also felt that Mufasa didn't have a lot of challenges in his life. He was born to be king, in a sense. And it almost feels like, I don't feel like kings are born. They're grown. They experience things. There's challenges. There's mistakes they encompass. Mufasa doesn't have that. Like, he had all the answers. He was the perfect lion. And I kind of related to Taka and feel like, maybe he deserves to die, but that's another story.
Wow.
No, hold on. So, but here I want to pick up what you just put down there, Anthony, because I think you're so right. I think Mufasa is introduced in this film in a way that he is someone who's lost everything and he has to build himself up. But I think so much of the growing that he does happens in one musical number, where it's like that brother musical number. So you're missing all of those like key moments where like, oh, like it'd be cool to see him learning these skills more, because, he gets, adopted into this world, and Taka is the one who's destined for the throne. And, Mufasa was, set to be king of his pride, but because he's, gets lost from there. There's those moments are really cool, and I love that they really explore that. And I think that's Barry Jenkins and obviously, the writing team coming together and being like, okay, let's tell a story where, these are brothers, they're going to get ripped apart. We've seen this before a lot. Obviously, you look at, even the first Lion King. This is a very, similar path that we're following here. But and it is Taka and Mufasa that I think is driving the story. So anytime that we're pulled away from them, because this movie is framed with Rafiki, telling the story to Kiara in, present day of, young Kiara that we see at the end of the first Lion King being born. And, we're telling the story while, Simba and Nala are off kind of doing their thing, which we won't, talk about what's going on with them. But we, she's being told a story. So we kind of keep coming back to them and Timon and Pumbaa. So I think you could come back to them maybe a couple times in the story, but it feels like we came back to them like 5 or 6 times, where it really was pulling us away. But the heart of the story, I think, is Taka and Mufasa. And I think that's what was really working for me. And because they took that feedback of, well, you know what, let's move the camera a lot more, for better and worse. There's a lot of movement with the camera this time around. There's a lot of emotion on the face of these animals, a lot more, where it's going to make it hard to go back to that 2019 one, because I'm like, oh my God, there's so much less emoting here than there was before. But yeah, I really enjoyed Mufasa and I really enjoyed Taka together, and, kind of seeing like, okay, yeah, you know what, we're getting the band together with Rafiki, and seeing how, Farabi comes into play, and Sarabi comes into play, and all of this. I really enjoy that. But, when we kind of get pulled elsewhere, we start to see the holes a little bit more.
I found it really interesting. I wanted to see, what does the name Taka mean in Swahili, because that's a lot of where the names originate from, and essentially there's a dual meaning to the name. It means like to want and to desire, but there's also this other meaning of like garbage and dirt. So it really parallels to Scar's upbringing. Like, he's someone who's constantly wanting and desiring, but is treated like garbage and dirt. And I find that so interesting that his name really comes into play with his upbringing here.
That's really, it's a great point to bring up, because I was looking at, like Thandiwe Newton, who plays Scar's mom, and her name is Eshe. And her name means like the eye. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Because it's like, sense. She's like, they're the hunter. She's kind of foreseeing. And, Mufasa is getting all the love that he wanted from his mom. He's getting taught very different lessons from his dad. Taka didn't have a Mufasa as a father, or, he didn't have that leadership. He was taught that, the male lions are at, they stay, they sleep. The women do the hunting, and, we protect if we need to. Very different lessons about what it takes to be a king, where Mufasa was instilled all of that from birth. So I think that's where what Anthony mentioned earlier, he feels like the perfect line because he was taught these lessons. And I think they were also very particular of like, we always have to show Mufasa as like this figure who is always right. But you want to see somebody make mistakes a bit more. I don't think we got to see Mufasa make, I don't think we got to see Mufasa make as many mistakes in this to become the king that we, knew him to be later on.
The antagonist, played by Mads, I would hope that he had a bigger reasoning to do what he's doing.
More motivation.
Because it just felt like, I just want to take over land. But it just felt so like surface level. And it didn't, I wish they had more, he had more of a value to breaking up these two characters, Like I wish he was a big part of the reasoning why they had not hatred, but like they just disliked and eventually broke up as these brothers.
Yeah, 100%. You wanted to see that fall. Again, we know where these characters are ultimately headed. You want to make that reason for them coming apart to feel all the more impactful. And this is a very similar criticism that we had with Transformers 1 earlier this year, where it's like we know Optimus and Megatron are going to not be best friends anymore. They're not going to be brothers. But sometimes when we know the final destination of a character, that turn can feel really quick.
It's just, I think when you look at a lot of where this movie is giving you the winks and the nods of like, oh, well, this is how this happened. It sometimes does feel a little like extremely on the nose, you're like, hey, this is how Rafiki did this, and this is why Pride Rock looks like that. It's like, okay, well, we don't need a reason for everything, like sometimes like trust the audience that they're a little smarter and that they can just kind of like get things going here. Because even when you find out how Scar gets his name and that whole process, you're just kind of like, yeah, I mean, makes sense. Like it's almost like it made it a bigger deal than it needed to be. So I feel like the subtlety that Barry Jenkins usually has in his writing and in his films was kind of put aside here, and you're kind of getting everything just really handed over to you.
Yeah, for sure. And again, and at the end of the day, I think there's room for nuance. This is something that obviously The Lion King is aimed for kids more, so there's a lot more hand holding when it comes to stuff. They're kind of on the journey to find Malele, right? Like they're this kind of like promised land, which again, we won't kind of spoil too much, but it's like you kind of know what that is if you've seen The Lion King at the end of the day. So when you see these little nods of like, oh, this is what this is, and this is how this person became this, it's like, yeah, like I think there's some fun payoffs, but again, I think sometimes the way they're handled is just like, in case you didn't know,
he's the Lion King. Oh, okay,
you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, like even when they talk about like Mufasa, like your name literally means king, dude. Like, yeah, we don't want you here. Like, it's like we really want to let you know that, like, hey, listen, like sometimes there's a little bit more subtle ways of doing stuff. Yeah. But let's get to our final recommendations for Mufasa, the Lion King. And Anthony, I'm going to get you to start us off.
I'm going to say, watch it. It'll be out during the holidays. Bring the kids. If they're fans of The Lion King, I think it's cool to see a little bit about Mufasa and where he started and just experience it. I think there's a lot of good part of this. There's a lot of interesting things from the story that people will take away from, but I think in the grand scheme of Lion King and just the franchise, it's not going to hurt it. I think it'll make some money. I don't know if it'll make $1 billion like the other one. I think that kind of like stained anything going further, but I think a lot of people will enjoy the story and just the brotherly love that comes from it.
Yeah, I'm with you there too. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think the brother relationship is the strongest part of this film. There's great performances, incredible voice acting in this. And again, when you pair it to the more lifelike, you get more emotion out of these lions, more than you did before. But at the end of the day, they still look like, real life lions. So it's sometimes a little hard to get past those, incredible performances coming out of like a real looking lion. But I had a fun time with it. I think it's a little too long, and I think there's some things that didn't always work for me, but at the end of the day, I think it's an interesting story. I love the character of Mufasa, so it was great to hear more of him. And I'm just really curious to see what they do going forward from here. But I would say if you love Lion King, go check it out. If you're not someone if you were adamantly against the 2019 version, I don't think this one's going to really change things for you. It's definitely an improvement. It's multiple feet in the right direction, but I think a lot of the issues that you had with that one, you may see them pop up here as well too. Shahbaz, take us on home.
Yeah, I think I'm also going to say watch it as well. I spoke a lot more about my criticisms for this film, but ultimately I was entertained by this movie. I don't think this is a film, though, that I'm going to be watching over and over again. I think that one time that I watched it, especially coming closer to the holidays, I had a great time, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, there are issues here and there, and that's kind of what's preventing me from making this movie a staple in my household or one that I continue to watch. But that one viewing that I kind of gave it, I'm like, I enjoyed it. I had a good time, and it is on a massive screen. You want to see it because that's kind of the best way to see the visuals that they've created.
Yeah, just avoid seeing it in 3D if you can. I don't think that would add too much to the muted visuals that we get a lot of the times in these live action remakes. So avoid that if you can. Of course, Mufasa, The Lion King, is in theaters on December 20th. Let us know if you go check it out. We will have a Discord room open up. Check out our show notes for everything you need to know and more. And look forward to some very fun interviews for this very movie coming soon here on the Movie Podcast feed and on YouTube. But until then, that was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.